Welcome all and good morning. So we'll go ahead and get moving on our webinar. And so for those who weren't here on exactly 10 a.m. on the dot, we'll be presenting on how to apply for the Golden State Priority Project today. Next slide. As a brief agenda of what we'll be going over today, we'll be going over a general agenda, introduction of the Golden State Priority Project in general, and then get into the details of different sessions. Session 1 will be covering how to apply. Session 2, different required documents, including the site verification form, permit application or service utility design package, and the EVITP Compliance. Session 3 will be covering our construction progress tracker, and then we'll be closing it off at the end for all questions and answers. Next slide. And so to introduce myself, my name is Bailey Muller. I work here at the Center for Sustainable Energy. Today, we'll be having a group of speakers to go over our different sessions. First, for us today with CSE, Alex Dahl with CSE, Rob Taylor with CSE, and then panelists will be joined with Brian Fauble from the California Energy Commission. Next slide. Before we get started, all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar itself. However, we have a chat box as well as a question function. So any questions you have during the presentations, you can go ahead and add that to the chat box. Like I said, we will be having a section at the end where we'll be covering all questions for all the different sessions all at once. So make sure you add your questions in there, and we will cover it at the end of the presentation. We will be also conducting polls throughout the presentation, so please respond and include any additional feedback within the chat box that you may have in response to those questions. And then finally, just due to high traffic, we have over 400 people trying to attend this webinar. So if you experience technical difficulties during the presentation, we do apologize for any delays or compromised presentation quality. We will be recording these presentations as well as posting them on our website. So for any technical difficulties you may experience, we do encourage you to go reference that on our website after. And then additionally, if you have any questions specifically on a presentation, we do encourage anyone to contact us at our email address at calivip@energycenter.org. Next question, next slide. And so as a Cali VIP 2.0 project goals and priorities overview, in this 2.0 project, we are having multiple priorities that we're looking into. So first one is readiness and rapid deployment of chargers. We do have a bunch of applicant readiness prioritization through its new tiered ranking system. This release of this project, we have different tools to help assist applicants with different project management, and we do want to generally have a fast release of funding for other regions and next projects. And so while we have this specific project launching now, we are actively working on trying to get new projects trying to launch in the future. Overall, we want this to be a fast and efficient application processing for both us as well as any applicants. And so for this, we want to have an applicant window for submission. This will not be first come, first serve. There will be a specified 45-day application window for all applicants to submit any applications, and then all applicants will be processed at the same time at the end of that window. We do have increased automation within the processing and applicant communication to help kind of streamline that process. And then we will have a notice of award 1 month after the application window. And then finally, we do have a focus on equitable distribution of chargers. We are prioritizing DC fast charging deployment with the balance of low-income communities and disadvantaged communities within those eligible counties. We do have a focus additionally on the fair and equitable distribution for both community and EV service providers. Next slide. To help with this equity and outreach, we are partnering with 2 organizations, one, the Central California Asthma Collaborative, as well as Grid Alternatives, and they will help us with increasing access of charging within these most vulnerable areas within the state. Specifically, they'll be helping with outreach and education to different community-based organizations and local partners within our eligible counties. Next slide. The eligible counties I've been discussing over and over for this specific launch are within the central region as well as the eastern region. You could see the central region is 12 different counties. Eastern region is 18 different counties for 30 counties total for this launch. The central region is allocated $10 million of this funding, and the eastern region $20 million. The application window that we have for this project opens next week on January 24th. So we'll go over more details on that. Next slide. And so for this specific Golden State Priority project, we do have different requirements. DC fast chargers are the only type of equipment eligible, and to be eligible for this specific project, you have to have a minimum guaranteed output of 150 kilowatt per active connector, as well as a minimum of 4 active connectors per site. Each site is eligible for a maximum of 20 active connectors for a rebate. You have to utilize specified eligible equipment and network providers that are within our website. You can see we will be updating that as time goes on, but to see approved lists of network providers and equipment, you can visit our website there. Additionally, priority population sites will only be funded within disadvantaged communities or low-income communities as defined by the California Air Resources Board California Climate Investment Priority Population Map, which is hyperlinked right there. If your site is not within that disadvantaged community or low-income community, it is not eligible for this project specifically. And then finally, for rebate eligibility, up to 50% of the project's total approved costs will be eligible for rebate. And with that, it is based upon the guaranteed output of active connector. So while we do have a minimum guaranteed output of 150 kilowatt, it can go higher. And so if your site is 150 kilowatt to 274.99 kilowatt, that active connector is eligible for $55,000. But if the active connector has a guaranteed output of over 275 kilowatt, it is eligible for $100,000. Next slide. So we have different applicant eligibility and site requirements. This is all laid out on our website and within our implementation manual online, but applicants must be a site owner of their authorized agent with a site verification form submitted. They have business, sole proprietorship, nonprofit, California Native American tribe, or public or government entity based in California or operate in California-based affiliate. And the site must be well lit, secure, and compliant with all laws, ordinances, etc., and publicly available for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There are limited exceptions to that rule, which you can see a little bit more details on. But in general, for all eligible site types, we have that listed on our website below, hyperlinked on calivip.org. Next slide. As a recap with our application process, like I mentioned, this is an application window, and so it opens on January 24th. It closes on March 10th. Everyone will be notified of their applicant tier system on March 17th, and then on May 22nd, all applicant funds will be reserved and all applicants will be notified. There are some tips here. There is no benefit, as there has been in the past Cali VIP projects where they have been first come, first serve. There is no benefit to submitting your application early. So all applicants will be processed at the close of the application window. So we do encourage you to take your time, make sure you have all your checks and balances ready to go and confirmed before you click that submit button. And so with that as well, due to the expected high application volumes, we do encourage you not to wait to the last day, the last hour that is open, really for the fact that technology happens, issues happen, and we want to make sure that everyone has the most successful applicants possible. And so on the 24th, applications will open at, or the application window will open at 7 a.m. on that 24th Pacific time, and it will be closing at 5 p.m. Pacific time on the 10th. And so anytime in between those periods, you're able to submit your application. Next slide. And we really wanted to make sure people are checking and making sure and double checking all your information that you're inputting in your application is correct. Because we have a fast application processing turnaround time for getting funds reserved, where we will not be having an opportunity for people to correct any application errors after the application window. And so if there are major application errors in your application, unfortunately, that will result in a cancellation of the application. And so we do encourage you all to make sure you're taking advantage of different resources, asking questions before, and then submitting your application once that's all confirmed. And so we have some tips for some application success to think about at the very beginning, and our other coworkers will be going over some of the more details on the process and how to apply. But in general, we have the ask, check, submit. Think about that with the ask, use your application assistance request form. to request help with your application information and any supporting documentation. Any questions you may have, we have staff that can help out with that. And so this is your only opportunity to have our Cali VIP staff check incorrect information prior to your submittal. So if you're double guessing something, make sure you're asking it before you submit. Secondly, double check all your information is accurate and uploaded documents are all correct. Applications can be saved in draft prior to submittal, so we do encourage you to do that. Once a document is saved and once an application is submitted, it cannot be adjusted. And so once you submit, even within the window, you're not able to pull your specific application back. You can come and ask us specific questions and reach out to us if you submit an application and know that you have a major issue before the window closes, but we do encourage you to try to do your due diligence prior to submittal to make sure that's all correct. And then finally, after you confirm all your questions and verify your inputs, you can submit your application. And so once the application window closes, like I said, all applicants will be assigned a tier. The higher the tier and the more ready your application is, the more likely your application is to obtain a reservation of rebate funds. And so take your time, make sure your application is as good as it can possibly be, is as ready as it can possibly be, and then you'll be most likely to get those funds. So with that, we'll be going on to our first session of details. And Avin, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thank you, Bailey. All right, let's get into session 1 on how to apply. Before even applying, we highly recommend that you review our resource guides. They contain a lot of detail on GSPP, the application process, and frequently asked questions. If you have general questions or are not really sure where to start, the GSPP overview and implementation manual are a great resource. If you're unsure if your application or site is eligible, we have an entire resource guide dedicated to helping you understand eligibility. We have a site verification form resource guide that explains what exactly we are looking for in this document, along with examples and good practices. Similarly, we have a resource guide for the permit utility application. There's also the How to Apply guide, which is a step-by-step walkthrough of the application process. For even more information, we have the Terms and Conditions, GSPP Overview, Equipment Eligibility Guide, and the EVITP Resource Guide, which is coming soon. Next slide, please. Before applying, please also ensure that you know the following. I will not read over all of these. I will just give you a moment to look over them and familiarize yourself with them. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. All right, let's get into how to actually complete your application. The application is split into 7 sections, which we will go over today, along with tips for success for each section. Section 1 is on the application manager, where you will fill out information on the person who will be managing your application. Here you will also select if you are applying on behalf of another organization or on behalf of your own. Next slide. Section 2 is on the installation site details, where you will provide more information on the installation site, specific site use, EV charging station operator, the property owner, and power provider. Just for clarification, we'll go over some of these definitions. For specific site use, we ask that you select the site use that best represents your site based on the definitions that we have on our webpage. The EV charging station operator is the organization that will be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the charging stations, while the property owner, as the name says, is the owner of the property where the chargers are installed. Next slide. A couple of tips for success here. You really want to make sure that the installation address matches the site verification form and that it matches the permitting and any other official documentations. Essentially, the address at which you are installing your chargers needs to be the same in any documentation that you submit to Cali VIP. You also want to make sure that your installation address is in an eligible area, meaning it has to be in an eligible Eastern or Central Region County, and it has to be in one of the 4 disadvantaged or low-income community categories for the California Climate Investment Priority Population Map. If you're unsure if your site is eligible, we do have our site eligibility resource guide, which will walk you through if your site is eligible. We also want to highlight that each site will only be awarded funding for one application. This is different from CaliVIP 1.0, where you could submit multiple applications for the same site. And if your site was determined to be a larger site, you could get multiple forms of funding. However, for GSPP, each site will only be awarded funding for one application, independent of size. So we do ask you to please combine all charges that a site is applying for into one application. If you do submit multiple applications, they will get canceled. Next slide, please. Some more tips for success. With the primary site purpose, we do ask you to really consider what the primary purpose of the site is. For instance, if you have a parking garage that is really serving a hospital, the primary site would be the hospital, not the parking garage. You also really want to make sure that your site is publicly accessible 24/7, as Bailey was saying, with the only exception being parking lots or garages, which have to be publicly available at least 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, excluding holidays. Last tip for success is you want to make sure that the property owner name matches the property owner name on the site verification form. Next slide. Lastly, for the installation site details, we'll be asking you these 6 questions. We'll be asking if the site is on tribal land, if there are existing need for EV chargers at the proposed site, what type of existing need there is, what the applicant relationship is to the site, who will own the EV chargers, and if there will be a fee for charging at your DCFC chargers. Next slide. Section 3 is the equipment selection. For a full list of eligible equipment, you can visit our equipment dashboard on our website. There you can find all eligible equipment to see if your model qualifies. If you have not selected your equipment yet, you can also browse the dashboard and even compare to models. The product page is also directly linked within the dashboard for your convenience. If you are installing more than one charger, make or model at your site, you just select Add Equipment and add any additional charges that you want. A very important note here is that you only receive rebates for up to 20 active connectors, and you have to apply for a minimum of 4 active connectors to be eligible. So the lower limit here is 4 to be eligible, and the maximum amount that you will get rebates for is 20 active connectors. Next slide. Tip for success here is that you really want to make sure that you have at least 4 active connectors selected. If you have 3 active connectors, 2, 1, your application will not be considered for funding. Next slide. Section 4 is the rebate recipient, which is the entity that will receive the rebate. You will provide a point of contact for this person, which can be different from the application manager. You will also lastly just select your preferred payment option. Next slide. Tips for success here is that you really want to ensure that the organization name matches the name listed with the Secretary of State Business Search, and that your organization is listed as being active and in good standing. In the case that your organization is not required to register with the Secretary of State, we ask you to submit one of the following with your site verification form. And also, again, please ensure that the organization name matches the one on the site verification form along with these documents. So we will ask for either a business license, a fictitious business name or DBA statement, or a 2020 or more recent state income tax form. Next slide. Section 5 are the required documents. At the time of application, the minimum documents due are the site verification form and permit application package or utility service design package. We will go way into depth on these documents in session 2, but this is just a high-level overview on when to expect the required documents. Tips for success here is once you upload and save a document to your application, as Bailey said, you will no longer be able to edit it. So before uploading and saving your documents, take advantage of our application assistance to get feedback on your documents. There's a form that you fill out, and we will get back to you within 2 business days. We'll also give more details in a bit about this application assistance request form. Section 6 are the terms and conditions. We know everyone always says this, but please make sure that you have not only read the terms and conditions, but thoroughly understand its contents. Once you do, you just acknowledge that you did, you check a box, and then you move on to section 7. Section 7 is review and submit. If you're at this point, congratulations, you completed your application. A tip for success here is, again, once an application is submitted, it cannot be edited, and Cali VIP staff will not reach out to correct any errors. This is different from 1.0, where you could submit potentially the wrong documents or have a document with a couple errors, with a couple of signatures missing, and in that case, a Cali VIP staff would have reached out to you to correct this. However, for GSPP, Cali VIP staff will not reach out to correct any errors. Your application will just get rejected. So please double, triple, quadruple check that your application is right and ready to go. And if you want and you're unsure if it is, you can take advantage of our application assistance to get feedback on your application and documents. If you encounter any issues with your application post-submission, but still during the application window, which again is March 10th, please reach out to our Golden State Priority email for any assistance. We ask that you do not submit another new application, so no duplicate applications. Please reach out to us if you submitted your application and you realize there was an error within it. For our application assistance, starting tomorrow through the application window, our technical education and advisory team will be available to assist you with completing your application, reviewing the required documents, and advising on how to improve tier status if possible. You will fill out this form, and we should be getting back to you within 2 business days. So with that, let's get into our first poll question. Just to gauge the interest and the volume, do you think you'll be requesting application assistance during the open application window? Okay, let's see. It looks like a lot of people do plan on signing up. That is great. Also, a lot of people want to work on their application first, which is very understandable. But again, this is available all throughout the application window. If you don't think you need it, that is also great. But if you're starting your application and you are unsure, the application assistance is always available. With that, I will hand it over to Alex to go over all the required documents.
Thanks, Alvin. For session 2, we are going to jump into what documents are required at the time of application, as well as throughout your Cali VIP installation project. So at the time of submission, as Alvin already mentioned, every single application will require submission of a completed site verification form and a complete permit application package or utility service design package. I'm going to dive deeper into both of these documents in a moment. Just to make you aware, 60 days after you are notified that funds have been reserved for your GSPP project, we will require for each application that you submit a copy of the equipment order, a copy of the issued permit, and a copy of the final utility service design, or if no utility service changes are needed, an official letter stating that's not required. This is just to give you a heads up of what's required as you move through the project. Next, at the completion of your installation, we are going to require many documents for every single application in order to receive your rebate payment. Again, this is just to give you a heads up of all the documents that we will be expecting throughout the life of your project. I'm not going to read through all of these. We'll just pause for a moment to let you briefly scan. Next slide, please. Now, in order to ensure that your documents meet the standards that we expect for your GSPP submission, we have published some Cali VIP quality submittal standards. These quality submittal standards are also published on the resource guides on our website if you want a closer look when you're ready to submit your documents. When we're reviewing all of your documents, we expect them to be complete with dates, signatures, and all relevant text and fields filled out on the document. We ask that the copies you submit to us are free of any handwritten changes. It's definitely really important that your Cali VIP application number is on the documents, as well as any permit or utility application numbers, if applicable. It's definitely important that your installation address and your organization name or the property owner name matches the address and the organization or property owner that's listed on the application itself. Please make sure that you're submitting the correct and the fully completed documents. Please make sure that all of the information you provide to us can be verifiable. We ask that any scans or photos of documents are clear and legible. And we ask that when you submit documents, you're submitting the complete copies of them, no pages are cut off. Incomplete, ineligible, or placeholder documents will simply result in an incomplete application and therefore will not be eligible for GSPP funding. As Alvin mentioned, in the past, we have accepted placeholder documents that applicants might upload to make us aware that you're working on collecting documents. For GSPP, we will not accept those. They need to be complete at the time of submission. Now we're going to dive deeper into the two documents that are required at the time of your application. The first of these is the site verification form. So at the time of application, all applicants are required to submit a site verification form for each of your GSPP applications. The site verification form's purpose is to identify the property owner and ensure that the applicant is authorized by the property owner to make the EV installation at the installation site address on your application. Now, this is a slight change from previous Cali VIP projects, where if you were the property owner, you were not required to submit a site verification form. For GSPP, every applicant for every application will need to include a site verification form, even if you are the owner of the site. For those of you familiar with the site verification form from previous Cali VIP applications, you will notice that it looks almost identical. The only update is this checkbox here next to the sentence, the application organization is also the property owner of the installation address identified above. If you are the property owner, you will simply check this box. Now, when we are reviewing the site verification forms, there are a few specific things we want to make sure are completed before we can approve it. These things are that the site address matches the address on the application, the applicant name matches the applicant name on the application, that all required fields are filled out, and that it's signed and dated by any required parties. Next, I'm going to review the second document required at the time of application. This is actually a 3-document submission package, the permit application or the utility service design package. So again, at the time that you apply, all applicants are required to include either a permit application package or a utility service design package for every single application. Again, this is a slight change from previous Cali VIP projects, where submission packages like these were not due until 60 days after funds were reserved for every application. Additional documents beyond the minimum required for this package will increase your application's tier status. This is important to note because funding will be prioritized for applications in higher tiers, and I will go over the tier system in a few moments. First, I want to take a closer look at what is due for each of these packages. These are screenshots taken from resource guides that are posted directly on our website. I highly encourage you to open up these resource guides and go through the checklist yourself when you're preparing these documents to ensure that you have everything you need before you hit submit. So first, let's start with the permit application package. For this package, you're going to need 3 unique documents. First, we're going to ask you for a copy of your permit application. This permit application needs branding of the permitting authority. It needs to have the installation site address, the scope of work for the charger installation. It needs to be completed and signed. Now, if you already have an issued permit for this project, you don't need to submit the permit application. We would prefer to see the issued permit itself. Next, we're going to need a copy of the plan set. And again, this plan set must have the installation site address and the scope of work for the charger installation. Finally, we're going to ask for a copy of the plan check fee receipt. And again, this plan check fee receipt must have verification of payment and must match the permit application. Now, if you're operating in an AHJ that does not require fees due at the time of permit application submission, we simply need to see some alternative documentation that proves that your application has been submitted and that nothing further is required from the applicant in order for the AHJ to review the permit. So examples of this might be an email confirmation from the AHJ saying received, or a screenshot from an AHJ submission portal showing that nothing further is due. Either way, the receipt or the verification documents must match the permit application. Next is the utility service design package. Again, you will choose either the permit or the utility service design package when you submit this document. The utility service design package is very similar to the permit application package in that it requires 3 unique documents. The first document is a copy of the new or upgraded service application, where again, we will be verifying branding from the utility service provider, the address of the proposed installation site, the scope of work of the charger installation, and that it's completed and signed. Just like in the permit scenario, if you already have a final utility service design, please provide that instead of the application itself. Now, if your installation project does not require any new or upgraded utility service, we're going to ask you to provide us with a letter from the utility service provider stating that no utility service changes are needed at that installation site. Next, you're going to need a copy of the plan set. And finally, you're going to need a receipt showing that you have paid the engineering advance. Again, we need to be able to see the verification of payment and match that to the new or upgraded service application itself. Again, just like in the permitting scenario, if no fees are due at the time that you submit a new or upgraded utility service application, we just need some sort of alternative documentation showing that your application has been submitted and you are waiting for the utility service provider to review it. If you do not need any new or changed utility service, you do not need to submit the plan set or the fee payment. Now I want to pause here and talk about the tier status. After submission, applications will be prioritized based on the documents that you have submitted for the permit or utility service application package. Once a tier is determined, the application will be randomly assigned a place in the queue within your designated tier. Tier 3 reflects the minimum required documents at the time of application. Let's jump down now to look at this table. We'll start at the bottom, tier 3, which we're calling the design in progress tier. A tier 3 application requires the submission of a site verification form and a permit application package or utility service design application package. Because these are the 2 required documents at the time of application, every single application will start as a tier 3 application. Again, tier 3 reflects the minimum required documents at the time of application. Now, at the time that you submit your application, if you have an issued permit or a final utility design for your installation, please provide those in this package document slot. If you have an issued permit or a final utility design with this package, your application will move up to tier 2, the design approved tier. If you have both an issued permit and a final utility design, your application will move up to tier 1, the ready to build tier. Now, rebate funding will be reserved in queue order for all eligible applications or until all of the funding allocated for the application window is reserved, whichever one comes first. The queue of reserved rebate funding will progress through tier 1, then 2, then 3, which is why it's very important if you have the issued permit or the final utility design, that you provide us with that at the time that you apply. Now, we are aware that there are a few unique permitting scenarios where your documents might not match the nice checklist that we provided a few slides ago. For example, if you operate in a public agency that's required to conduct a request for proposal or some other bidding process, instead of the permitting documentation that we reviewed a few slides ago, we're going to ask you to submit a copy of the executed agreement with the winning bidder, a copy of the RFP policy so we can verify that an RFP policy is in place, a copy of the preliminary plan set, and an updated project timeline, just verifying that despite the RFP process, you can still meet our project end date. Alternatively, if you're in a self-permitting jurisdiction, instead of the permitting documentation, we are going to ask for a signed letter from a jurisdiction representative showing the scope of work has been approved at the installation site. We're also going to need a copy of the plan set. If you are operating in a unique permitting scenario, we highly encourage you to review your documents with CSE staff prior to submitting your application. Finally, I want to talk briefly about the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, or EVITP Compliance. Now, all Cali VIP projects must comply with EVITP requirements as dictated by the state code. At the beginning of your installation project or at the time of application, we will not ask you to verify EVITP requirements, but it's very important before you begin your installation that you're aware of these requirements to make sure that you are complying with them throughout the duration of your entire installation project. If you're looking for more information on EVITP, you would like to search for EVITP certified installers near you, or if you're an electrician or a contractor who's looking to become EVITP certified, please find more information on the EVITP website, evitp.org. Now, in order to demonstrate that you have complied with the EVITP requirements throughout the duration of your installation, we are going to ask you for an electric vehicle infrastructure training program requirements affidavit for every single one of your applications. Again, EVITP compliance must be demonstrated throughout the entire charging installation, but we are not going to ask you for this signed affidavit until the final document submission. Please do not wait until the final document submission to understand the requirements. When you complete the EVITP requirements affidavit, we are going to be checking that it is signed by both the rebate applicant and the contractor, and that it matches your Cali VIP application number and site address. This affidavit will also include a project description statement where we will ask you for the construction commencement status, the number and output of the EVCS installed, and contractor information, including the EVITP certification numbers of each certified electrician who worked on your site. And that was a lot of information, so let's jump into another poll question. Which documents are required at the time of application? You can select all that apply. We have the site verification form, the permit application package or utility service design package, or the EVITP requirements affidavit. We'll give you a few seconds to log your choices now. Great, so as a reminder, just these top two forms, the site verification form and the permit application package or utility service design package, are due at the time that you hit submit on your application. The EVITP requirements must be followed throughout the duration of your installation, but we will not ask for any signed documents for your EVITP compliance until the end of your project. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Rob Taylor.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks everyone for attending our meeting this morning. My name's Rob Taylor. I'm a senior manager in the EV infrastructure department here at CSC, and I manage the construction progress tracker, which I'm going to introduce to you today. Next slide, please. The construction progress tracker is a user-friendly tool that allows applicants to self-report project progress and track progress. And for the purposes of our introduction today, I am going to give you a general overview of the tool and speak specifically to what you're going to need to know during application. That being said, we are going to have more in-depth trainings specifically focused on the construction progress tracker in the month of February, and invitations to those trainings will be sent out to the folks at this webinar and on our email list. There'll be a few different options to choose from. So please plan on attending those to get more in-depth instruction and information on using the construction progress tracker. The general overview, this is what it looks like inside a specific project in the construction progress tracker. And we're asking applicants to self-report progress as they move through their project. And that is simply going into each one of these tasks. As you can see here, there's an example: construction started, or balance of systems complete, EV charging equipment installed, and clicking the little checkbox and turning it green. Each project in Cali VIP Block Grant 2 will have a unique project page in Teamwork where applicants will update project tasks and milestones as they're completed. Next slide, please. So during your application and funding, this is what you'll see. On the day that you receive funds reserved, you will receive an email invite to Teamwork for your specific project. And this email will go specifically to the primary email that the applicant manager has entered. We can definitely add additional folks to manage the project or change the primary manager within Teamwork once the applicant manager has accepted this invite. But it's important that the applicant manager receive this email and accept the invite for the specific project. It is free to open an account within Teamwork to manage your projects. And very important to note that applicants have 5 days to create an account or funds reserved will be canceled. And again, we will send this email when funds are reserved specifically to the account manager. And what they need to do to create an account is simply click this Get Started link within the email. They have 5 days to do so. And if it is not done within 5 business days, the funds will be canceled. Next slide, please. This is what it looks like once you click the link. Very simple. Just enter first name, last name, and choose a password and click Finish Sign Up. And that will notify us that you have completed your account sign up. Next slide, please. These are the general expectations within the construction progress tracker as you move through the project. Number one, primarily to reiterate, is to create a Teamwork account and read the issued directions on day 1 of funding. So we'll send you the Teamwork user guide as well as an introductory email explaining first steps. Number 2, at the 60-day checkpoint, provide utility service design or an issued permit. Obviously, if you're in a higher tier, this may already be done at the 60-day mark. We're asking that applicants update your project tasks and completion of milestones in Teamwork throughout the timeline. You will get reminders of major milestones 15 days before that milestone is expected to be complete. You'll be sent an email reminder that that milestone is coming up. There's going to be questionnaires sent periodically at day 120, 210, 300, and 420 that are required. They'll be sent via Teamwork with general questions about the progress of the project. And then final documentation submission on day 450, assuming there are no active extensions with the project. Next slide, please. This is a representation of the typical project timeline for a DCFC project in Block Grant 2, specifically indicating times where you will be communicated with via teamwork from CSE. We're calling day 0 the funds reserve date, and that is when you will get the invitation email. The diamonds are when you'll get sent 15-day reminders ahead of significant milestones, reminding you to either update tasks or milestones or be prepared to update those. And then the green circles here at day 120, 210, 300, and 390 are the periodic questionnaires that will be sent out. And again, the most important takeaway from here is please keep an eye out for the welcome email and sign up for teamwork as soon as you get funds reserved within 5 days of getting funds reserved. And we will have further training, in-depth webinars on the construction progress tracker tool in February. So keep an eye on your inboxes for an invitation to those. Next slide. And here's our next poll question to get another general sense of where applicants are. What tier do you expect your submitted applications will be in? Select all that apply.
Okay, so it looks like the majority of people are anticipating tier 2 status, which is great. We do encourage everyone, as we stated before, tier 1 as much as possible. You will have the most likelihood of receiving funds the higher the tier you are. And so if you have any questions on how to get to that next tier or any sort of hurdles you're having in order to receive that next tier status, we definitely encourage you to reach out to our team with that application assistance form to try to get you to that next tier status. But it looks like the majority of people are approximately 60% are either tier 1 or tier 2. So that's looking good, but we have 45 days in order to get popped up into that tier 1 status. So that's looking great. And so next question, we have one more poll question for you. So how many sites do you expect you'll apply for? 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 50, or over 51? Right. So it looks like the majority of people are applying for 1 to 10 sites, with 11 to 25 coming in second. And so, yeah, if people have questions on the amount of sites or anything in regards to that, definitely once again reach out to our team and we can help you figure that out as you are going through the process. So next slide. So from here into the end of the webinar time, we'll have question and answers. For those who have been submitting questions throughout, thank you. We have been listing those. We'll start asking those. But for any additional questions that you have throughout this and the last couple minutes of the webinar, we'll definitely be adding those in and continue to answer those. So next, well, I guess we could just keep it on this. The next slide is just final information. I'll just start asking questions. And so I guess the first question will get to Fidel. And so if you want to deploy 20 active connectors, the maximum active connectors at 150 kilowatt each, how much funding can an applicant receive?
Hi. So yes, you can get a rebate that covers up to 50% of your costs, and that cap would be up to $2 million, assuming the 20 active connectors at 150 kilowatt each.
And a question for Alex. Are low-income sites within half a mile of disadvantaged communities still eligible for funding?
Yes, so when looking at the priority population map, the yellow tier labeled low-income communities within a half-mile of disadvantaged communities are eligible. However, the next tier, the green and white stripes that are labeled low-income households, are not eligible. If you have any questions about your site eligibility and especially matching up the key on the priority population map, I highly encourage you to look at the applicant and site eligibility resource guide that's listed on our website.
And then Avin, question for you. If a property has multiple parcels, are you able to apply 20 active connectors per parcel, or is it considered per property?
By parcel, they mean it's like the same site. So if it has different addresses, but it's still within the same site or the same property, that will only be eligible for one application.
Fidel, if a site is a vacant lot, is it still eligible if it meets all other requirements?
No, new development sites are not eligible.
And Fidel, another follow-up question. Will there be any additional funding for sites in multi-unit dwelling hotspots?
No, there won't be any increase in rebate amount or any sort of adders to incentivize the installation of DCFCs near multi-unit dwellings.
Okay, and Brian, a question for you. For all other counties not listed, for example, Los Angeles County, are there any other programs available for rebates?
Thank you. So from the Energy Commission, right now our only other funding that will be available is our other block grant called the Communities in Charge. They are going to be launching, I believe, in March, and they again are level 2 only rebate program. So that will be the other funding opportunity from the other from the Energy Commission. But again, level 2s only. We hope again, maybe in the second half of this year, to release additional funding for our other regions in Cali VIP 2.0, but that's still TBD down the line. Otherwise, outside of the Energy Commission, I just encourage you to explore your local utilities, your air districts, and cities and counties sometimes offer funding. So in Los Angeles County, I know LADWP typically has a program.
And as a follow-up question for you, Brian, are there any other rebates for level 2 charters still available?
So again, level 2, right now, Cali VIP 1.0, if you go on the website, there is some funding still available in 1.0 in scattered counties, but you're gonna have to go through the projects and the funding visualizations to figure out where that is. I do encourage you to apply, if there is funding available, to apply immediately, as again, that is first come, first serve. But other than that, again, the Communities in Charge will be launching in March of this year.
Okay, Avin, we have a question for you in regards to the application question. So prior to the submission deadline, can you replace an uploaded document with an updated version of that document?
So applicants, they can upload any additional documents, but once you submit a document and save it, you really can't make any changes to it. And that's when we ask if you do realize that even after double checking it and checking in with the application request form, if you've done all this and you submit a document and realize there was an error and you already saved it, we do ask that you reach out to that Golden State Priority email.
Okay, and we'll give this next question to Alex. What is the definition of a property owner? What if an applicant has a leased property, which it has full control and decision right over to make an EV install decision?
Yeah, so you do not need to be the actual property owner in order to receive a rebate. We'll just have you fill out the site verification form to confirm that the property owner is okay with the charger installation at that site. So if you are leasing, if you are an application organization on behalf of an owner, whatever the relationship is with the site, we'll just ask that you fill that out when you complete the site verification form.
And question for Brian. New developments are not eligible. Is there not funding for new development projects, or why are new developments not eligible within this specific project?
Sure. Yeah, both our rebate programs will not have new developments as eligible. Again, our block grants are made for quick and expedited deployments, and typically new developments take quite some time to complete with permitting, with environmental reviews, and etc. So they will not be eligible. They may still be eligible in some of the Energy Commission's solicitation or grant funding opportunities, but you would have to review each grant funding opportunities application manual to determine if they are eligible. But again, this is for quick and expedited installations. We do have the max of 15 months for our deployments, but we're really now with our new tiered approach hoping for much faster installations.
Okay, and Fidel, a couple questions, combining a few of them in regards to funding caps. And so what is the cap on total funding? And then also, is the $2 million cap you mentioned before per site or per developer?
The total funding available will be $30 million. That is $10 million for the central region and $20 million for the eastern region, totaling that $30 million. And then the up to $2 million cap applies to the site and application, since only one application will be accepted per each site.
And another follow-up on funding. If funding is not enough for certain tiers and it is fully reserved before tier 3, will there be a lottery following that?
Yes, that's correct. So we will fund in order tier 1, tier 2, then tier 3 applications. If we do run out of funding and can't fund all the applications within a tier, then it does turn into a lottery type system where applicants are selected at random for funding.
Okay, and another question for Fidel here. After someone submits their application, are they able to change the equipment they use once from one approved charger to a different approved charger after submission and funding approval, or do they have to stay with the same charger that they put on their application?
So you do have to have a eligible equipment selected on your application at all times. But you can change your equipment at any time prior to funding being awarded or you requesting payment for your application.
Okay, and then question for Brian. Can you explain the difference between this program and NEVI? And will separate funding programs be announced for NEVI, or is this part of the deployment of those pool of funds?
So Cali VIP is 100% separate from NEVI. These funds for Cali VIP are from our clean transportation funding, which includes general funds from the state, but is 100% separate and not meant to be any way never using NEVI funds. So NEVI itself will be a separate funding opportunity through the Energy Commission in partnership with Caltrans, and will be a competitive solicitation process. The main difference is NEVI will not be for individual sites, but rather a group of strategic locations aimed at minimizing the distance between stations on the corridors. So you will not be able to apply for just one site. Most of these range anywhere from 4 to 9 sites amongst at least 1 to 5 different corridors that you'll have to do. So Cali VIP is again aimed for a single site, even though our requirements for the chargers are pretty much similar. The purpose is vastly different.
Fidel, question on tiering. So once an application is submitted with only the permit application and they receive the issued permit during the time of waiting for funds reserved, are they able to email Cali VIP notifying them of the permit issued? And will this bump the application in the tier stage?
So if some situation arises where you'd like to consider accepting additional documentation, you should email us. But again, this would only apply during the application window. After the application window, and only the submitted information will be considered for the funding reservations, and this is to help us expedite and guarantee that faster notification of funding awards or reservations.
Okay, and a question for Alex, are all applications needed to be filled out online?
Yes, there is no paper documentation. There are no in-person applications. The entire application will be submitted online on our website.
Okay, and quick question for Brian. What is the name of the level 2 program starting in March?
Sure, it's called Communities in Charge, and their website is thecommunitiesinCharge.org.
Question for Avin. I see a DC fast charger with 2 connectors per equipment. Does the required 4 connectors mean that we need to install 2 equipment? And any of the incentives will be doubled up for this case?
So I want to also point to the resource guide with the eligible equipment. When we say 4 active connectors, it can be 2 equipments that have 2 connectors each that are active, but there are certain instances where an equipment only has 1 active connector. So you really want to make sure that you have 4 active connectors. If it is the case that your equipment each model has 2 active connectors, then yes, you only need 2 equipments to fulfill that minimum 4 active connectors requirement. If you do have any questions, again, I would direct you to the resource guide, and you can always reach out to us too if you have any questions, and the technical assistance form.
Question for Brian. Are any of these chargers eligible for neighborhood low-speed vehicles or any vehicles that go 25 miles per hour max?
No, these vehicles are meant to serve light-duty vehicles, typically cars and trucks, and the chargers themselves must use the SAE CCS connector. those low-speed neighborhood vehicles, if you plug these into a 150 kW charger, you're going to blow that battery probably instantly. So no, these are meant for normal vehicles.
Okay, and I just see a question on the implementation manual. I can just answer that quickly. The implementation manual, which has a lot of details written out and broken out of what we're talking about here and helping you guys guide your way through the application itself, is available online. It's linked within these slides, but it's also available on the Golden State Priority Project page on our website. So we do encourage you all to look through that and download that to reference as you're filling out your application. Next question for Fidel. Can contractors participate in this program, or is it required to sign up as a trade ally first, and can rebate be assigned to contractors?
Yes, so contractors can participate in the program. There's no requirement to be associated with any specific trade organization or anything of that sort. We encourage all types of business models. So there's no requirement that the applicant be the site owner or the charge point operator. It can be the contractor, and who gets the rebate is up to the decision of the parties of the installation itself. You will just have to designate that in your application.
Okay, another question for you, Fidel. Can these rebates work towards the unit itself as well as towards install and power upgrades? And are there any make-ready funding available for these counties to your knowledge?
Yeah, so funding that additional infrastructure is eligible costs within the program. So the funding could be used for that. The way rebates are determined is you submit to us the costs that the rebate recipient or the applicant organization has incurred, and then we base the rebate amount based on the sum of those costs. So if that includes any costs to have infrastructure upgrades, that is included in the rebate amount.
Okay, and Brian, are you able to stack funding from this with other utilities and other funding structures?
So if you go to the landing page for Golden State Priority Project, there is towards the bottom a section on stacking funds and incentives. So again, I just encourage you to read the implementation manual resources, but essentially there are lots of other programs that we do allow stacking for, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I don't believe we stack with the investor-owned utilities. But yeah, maybe Fidel, if you want to expand on it, or have everyone just read the resources online.
I'm sorry, I missed that last bit. Can you repeat, Brian?
I'm blanking on stacking, if we allowed stacking with the IOUs or not, but my recommendation was just to review the implementation manual and the website where they talk about stacking.
I see stacking with IOUs. Yes, we have listed on our resources that stacking is eligible with IOUs for the Golden State Priority Project.
Next question for Alex. Is EVITP certification required from installer for a site to receive a rebate?
Yes, we are upholding the state requirements that EVITP certification requirements must be met. If EVITP certification, or excuse me, if EVITP requirements are not met, you will not be eligible for funding. You will not be eligible to receive your rebate. So again, I highly recommend that you understand the EVITP requirements before you begin your project. For example, the EVITP requirements state that at least one EVITP certified electrician be on crew at all times. And depending on the size of your installation, that may increase. You may be required to have more than one. If you need help finding an EVITP certified electrician, we have a resource on the Cali VIP website. It's called the Connects database. And there you can search electricians in your county, and you can actually filter to only show you ones that are EVITP certified. Or you can visit the EVITP website, where you're able to search for all electricians who have completed certification near you.
Okay, and Alex, another question for you. Is the site verification form, do they accept digital signature, or does it have to be a wet signature?
Yeah, good question. We are accepting digital signatures.
Okay. And then another question for you, Alex. Is a line item budget required to be submitted as a required documentation, and where is that within the application process?
Yes, we will be asking you for the line item of expenses, and that will be submitted at the very end of your project. We also are going to create a resource guide of eligible costs and how to submit those, and that will be on the GSPP website in the coming weeks.
Okay, and question for Fidel. Does it appear from today's participants that the available Eastern funds of $20 million will be exhausted very quickly?
So I think this is a good question to remind everyone that this is not first come, first serve. So funds can't really be exhausted quickly, because we will intake applications throughout the application window, and funding will not be reserved until the very end of the application window. So all funding will be reserved within, I'm forgetting how many, I'm blanking on how many days, but it will be reserved after the application window. So I encourage you to apply and not be discouraged by the volume of applications.
Yeah, and to expand on that, this is Brian. So yeah, Fidel was hinting at that once the application window closes, it's essentially about 60 days, 60 business days, which CSE will process every application we get, and everybody will know their outcome, whether they're funded or not. And again, I'd just add that though it's not first come, first serve, I do expect we will be oversubscribed, as in 1.0, pretty much, I think 90% of our DC fast charge funding was oversubscribed, where I think Cali VIP 1.0 overall oversubscribed about $200 million. So yes, I think we will always be oversubscribed in our funding windows, and that's why we encourage these application tiers to do your best to get into tier 1 and tier 2 as much as possible, as those will be funded first, and tier 3 will be at the most disadvantage.
Alex, more questions for you on the EVITP. Can you get certified for that online, or how often are the tests given for certification?
This is another good question. EVITP as an organization actually recently went through a major change where EVITP exams and courses are no longer in person. They are only available asynchronously online. So you're able to go to evitp.org, sign up for the course, take it in your own time, and then after the course is completed, take the exam online on your own time. So there's no specific day when tests are given. It's simply whenever you can complete it. As another reminder, we are a separate organization from EVITP, so unfortunately we cannot assist you with completing the course or the exam, but we do recommend that you fill out the contact form on evitp.org if you have more questions about becoming certified.
Yeah, and just thanks for adding that. I was going to hint that as well, that CSE and Cali VIP are separate organizations from the EVITP training program. But again, if you go to their website, some additional information that I just found, the course is online as mentioned. It is a 20-hour exam. The certification is also online, and they state it is 90 minutes, and the fee is $275 per individual. Again, all that information is on their website once you click on training.
A question for Fidel. Will applicants with higher volumes of qualified sites be treated with priority?
No, so if we are looking, we will not be looking at the specific applicants when creating the queue and assigning funds or reserving funds. The only characteristics we will be looking at is whether it meets minimum requirements and the tier that the application is assigned. We will not be looking at number of applicants or applications submitted per applicant. And most of those funds will be assigned randomly. So if there is some higher volume of applicants selected, it's purely through the random selection and not through any sort of prioritization.
Okay, and Fidel, a follow-up question on priority. Will sites using 225 kilowatt or greater be treated with priority over 150 kilowatt chargers?
No, that's not a criteria we'll be looking at when creating the queue. Again, it'll mainly be focused on the readiness of the site based on the application tiers and then the random selection. So the level or power level of charging you are installing is not factored into that decision.
Okay, Fidel, one more question for you. If they're not approved for funds reserved at the beginning, do they need to reapply at a later time if additional funds become available?
There will be subsequent funding windows at a later date. So I would stay tuned for notices of additional funding that would be added to the Golden State Priority Project and any subsequent projects that we may be launching. But the aim is to provide funding much more frequently than previously and in more regions than previously so that we can have funding opportunities for the whole state as frequently as possible.
And question for Brian, will this be an annual funding source to apply for, or is this a one-time grant?
So right now, again, this block grant is being treated separately from Cali VIP 1.0. So we are in our baby phase again for Cali VIP. I'd maybe call it our teenager phase since we do have lessons learned. But with all positive signs moving forward, our plan is hopefully to continue funding this project in multiple rounds. Maybe changing the regions with each release depending on how much funding we have available. But ultimately we do again plan to use this over and over and not do again, targeted by county. So we hope to do more and more as funding permits from the state.
And question for Avin, if a property owner or company has 10 location sites, do they have to submit 10 applications for those different sites?
So it depends if the sites are completely separate. For instance, if you are the owner of, let's say, Walmart, and you have 3 different Walmarts in 3 different cities, that would be 3 different sites. But if you have them very much with the same parking lot or something that would be considered the same site, that site is only eligible for 1 application. And if you're not sure, again, with this, you can look at our site eligibility resource guide, or you can contact us and we can give you a more personalized question to this.
Okay, and then question for Rob. Are they able to designate one account manager for all their applications to be able to have a one-point person to handle all the teamwork submissions for the construction progress tracker after?
So yes, the method for that would be, so if whatever email is associated as the application manager for the initial application, that will be sent the initial invite to teamwork. We can invite additional collaborators to those projects, and we can on email request make any individual the main point of contact for those emails.
Perfect. And then someone from the T team with this one, if funds are approved for an application, but the site host decides to cancel, are we able to use the funds reserved for another application they have in the queue?
No, so once funds reserved, once an application has funds reserved, the funding is reserved for that specific application. And if then that application cancels, then the funding would return to the project and would be used in a subsequent funding release.
Okay, and then I'll do for Avin as a contractor. If I have one owner with several sites, can I file separate applications for each site?
Yes, so each site should submit its own application. We just can't have multiple applications for the same site.
Okay, I'm just going through the rest of the questions on this list to make sure we have any left. For Alex, can you define the type of e-signatures that are acceptable? Does it have to be DocuSign? Is Adobe signature approved, or does it have to go through a different process?
Yeah, any reasonable way to sign the document is fine. DocuSign or the fill and sign feature on the PDF. If you prefer, you're always welcome to print out your documents, hand sign them, and then provide us with scans of those documents. That works as well.
Okay, and then for Fidel, is Southern California eligible in this program? And if not, when will there be funds opening for Southern California?
So as Brian alluded to, this would be considered in additional rounds of funding. It's not included in this specific round of funding. So once, if and once new funds are approved, then we would consider additional regions. For example, LA is within the southern region and should be next in line to receive funding.
Yeah, and I'll add on that as well. So again, mentioning that this is in our teenage baby phase of setting everything up and making sure our new process is going to flow smoothly. We're not committing to any future releases because we want to make sure we set up the foundation well before we start opening the floodgates. So we think we've done that, and this is going to be our test phase. Once we process all these applications, we'll see how we did to our expectations, and then we'll do another one. And then after that, maybe second phase, we're hoping to start opening the floodgates if we still have all the funding available. All the applicants to help us, make sure you're submitting the right documents where we can minimize cancellations or errors or etc. And so that's why, again, we're moving to this application window to try to take both sides of it, to have quality applications submitted with fewer errors, and also then speed up processing.
Question for Avin in regards to the application again. One application for one address site. However, they need a little bit more clarity. There are multiple EV locations within the same address. example, a really large parking lot, how does that work?
Okay, so for a really large parking lot, that would still be just one application, which is the big difference from 1.0. In CalVIP 1.0, if you had a very, very large site, that could qualify for multiple fundings. But in GSPP, every site, regardless, independent of its site size, will only get one application.
And to expand on that, on the justification, again, we changed our requirements of how many chargers per site from 1.0, where I think our max was 6, which now, again, we've said in 2.0, the max is 20. So think of this as a mall or a shopping center that has 10 businesses in it. We are doing this on one, parcel or one parking lot because we don't want to allow that one shopping center with 10 businesses to submit 10 different applications that could essentially have 200 DC fast chargers. That's not necessary. That's a little extreme. So we are, again, limiting it to 20, which we raised, and we're not trying to do 200 charger deployments.
Okay. And Fidel, the fast chargers that take credit card payments are considered eligible?
Yes, all fast chargers are required to have credit card payment. So yes, they would be eligible.
And to add on that, the credit card payment is law as well. It's not really something that we are establishing in Cali VIP or from the commission. It was generated from SB 454, which requires any charger that requires payment and is publicly accessible must have a credit card EMV chip reader.
Yeah, I guess that is a good distinction. If the charger is not requiring payment or will be set to a free vend mode, that's the only scenario where lack of payment would be accepted.
And then follow up to that, guys, does DC or can the DFast have both CCS and CHAdeMO in order to qualify for funding?
It can have CHAdeMO on the dispenser, but the funding is only awarded on the basis of CCS connectors. So if you decide to install a dispenser with both, that would still only be eligible for one rebate for the CCS connector.
And question for Rob on the extensions. Are extensions reviewed and granted on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, they are. Extensions for Block Grant 2.0 will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. An extension typically can be granted if the delay that the applicant is experiencing is outside of their control. We will request documentation to back up the extension, either from the permitting authority or the utility or the equipment supplier, depending on the type of extension. And the length of extension will be based on the timelines put forward by those third-party documents, either from the HJ or the utility or equipment supplier. Important to note that there will be, for Block Grant 2.0, a maximum of 2 extensions that have to be of different types. So for example, if you get a permitting extension, that's the one and only permitting extension. And if you did get a second extension, it would have to be for something different, such as utility design or installation or equipment delay.
And to add on that as well, that, if you're not getting the hint yet, Cali VIP 2.0 is really aiming for these tier 1s, and we're making our requirements a little bit tighter. Again, lessons learned from Cali VIP 1.0, where installations were taking too long or high cancellation rates, etc. So we're really looking for quality applications that you are going to complete and you're still not thinking about them. And 2, that you stay on top of these, because our updated extension policy, I believe, is or will be posted for 2.0, and it is a little bit more not as friendly, I would say nicely, that we're still allowing them on case by case, but it's not going to be open-ended, as Rob noted, that we need these chargers deployed much faster than we were seeing in 1.0. So definitely recommend you, one, familiarize yourself with the implementation manual and the extension policy, and two, stay in contact with CSC as much as possible and share and communicate anything as it comes up as soon as possible. I wanted to go back real quickly, Bailey, to the CCS and CHAdeMO as well, just to add that while chargers can have the CCS and CHAdeMO, as Fidel noted, that will only be rebating the CCS. So if one of the CHAdeMO is an active connector, it's not considered or counted towards the 4 that are required. And so if you have, 2 dispensers with a CCS and CHAdeMO and they're both active, that's only 2 active CCS connectors, and you will have to have 2 more CCS connectors to be eligible. Thank you.
Okay, and then some follow-ups on the extension as we're on the topic. There have been huge supply chain issues with switchgear. How many days could it be extended? Previously, it was 90 days with 1.0. Supply chain issues remain a problem, and they're waiting for orders of 6+ months. Will there be eligibility for multiple extensions in this case?
So no, there'll still be one extension, but if we can get verification from the supplier, then we can grant the extension for a longer period of time than 90 days. So our standard go-to number of days will be 90 days, but if evidence can be supplied from the supplier, then we can extend that extension to match the delay that is realistically expected.
Rob, can you confirm that we have a timeline as well? Once reserved, applicants must order their equipment by, and so they will know their realistic timelines of having these equipments delivered? Is it 60 days? Do we have that in there, that it's 60 days from reservation, the equipment must be ordered?
So we have guidelines. We don't have a specific requirement for when the equipment should be ordered, but we do anticipate that typically it would be ordered by the 90-day mark.
Great, thank you.
I will just jump in here. We do have a requirement to have equipment order document submitted to your application portal by 60 days. So there is a requirement to show that equipment has been ordered by the 60 days.
Thanks, Fidel.
And Fidel, final question for you. On the website, it says rebates cover up to 50% of the project's total approved costs. Who is approving what the project costs are? And is it a matter of the applicant submitted documents during the application process? And does this only pertain to EV chargers or the total cost behind the project, including labor and materials?
I can jump in here. So the costs are determined as approved cost if they comply or fall into some of the, at least one of the eligible cost categories listed on the website and on the implementation manual. And we will be also creating a cost resource guide to help you identify those eligible costs and how to import them into the application portal after funds reserved. And yes, labor can be included, design costs, and any of the costs listed in those eligible cost categories can be included in that submission.
All right. Not seeing any more questions pop up here, and so we can go ahead and start closing out. But did want to remind everyone this is recorded. This will be posted online, so you can reference these questions as well as the slide deck that we have. And then in addition to this webinar, we had a webinar in December going over different preparation for the project itself, which included requirements, upcoming requirements of OCPP certification, Energy Star certification, as well as information on ISO 15118. And then we went through our new website and the different resources and how to navigate that. So if you missed our webinar in December, that is also posted on our website if you want to check that out. But other than that, next slide, I guess, to have our final closeout slide. Oh, you're already on it. So yeah, visit our website there. It's listed, the calivip.org /incentive project /Golden State Priority Project. And you can contact us with any questions you have. The Golden State Priority Project is the specified project email. And then the evexpert@energycenter.org is for our technical team that can answer those specific questions. And then in addition to that, everything is posted with our CEC docket. You can view all of our materials, webinars, all of that, as well as submit comments to CEC on this project. And so we do appreciate all of your time today and hope to see a lot of your names popping up in our application process and technical assistance that we have available open during the application window time. But other than that, we hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.